For this set of vocabulary terms, we'll be covering another set of those test terms that may appear in assessments you take at every level. Let's go ahead and get started and look at the 10 terms for this week. Term number 1 is clarify. 2, disagree. 3, introduce. 4, accurate. 5, approximate or approximate. 6, vary. 7, likely. 8, paragraph. 9, include. 10, example. Term number 1 is clarify. To clarify something is to make it clear and comprehensible. Clarify means to make clear. A writer might include examples to help clarify a point. Language that is used to clarify is usually easy to understand and explanatory in tone. The example we have, it's important to clarify which type of test we're talking about in this situation. To clarify is to make it more clear for your audience. Term number 2 is disagree. If you disagree with someone, you have a different opinion than they do. To disagree means to be of different opinions. You'll see this come up in tests as in do you agree or disagree with a point? Asking you to state what your claim is in an argumentative essay or something similar. Term number 3 is introduce. To introduce is to bring before the public for the first time. It's to bring it in front of people or to present an idea. To introduce is to present something for the first time. This word may refer to the first few paragraphs of a passage where the main ideas are introduced for the first time, establishing what the passage is about. Over the course of a passage, new ideas or characters may be introduced. The way things are introduced can be a clue as to how the author feels about them. So think when you think introduce about the beginning, particularly if it's talking about an essay or a passage you're reading. Term number 4 is accurate. Accurate means characterized by perfect conformity to fact or truth. When something is accurate, it just means that it's correct. Accurate data is important when performing scientific experiments so that things don't mess up. You have to have the right measurements for the experiment to work, so you have to measure things out very accurately. When you're thinking accurate, think of exact. You're trying to be exact, and you're trying to measure things up as they're supposed to be. Term number 5 is approximate or approximate. It means not quite exact or correct. When you approximate something, you make an educated guess about its size or amount. An approximate number is one that is close to the real value but may not be exact. On most standardized tests and just tests in general, especially on math or science tests, you may be asked to give approximate answers, which means you will be expected to round the number. A question might ask something like, approximately how many times greater is quantity X than quantity Y? Term number 6 we have is vary. For something to vary means that it's going to be subject to change. When something doesn't say the same, we say that it varies. To vary is to change. In a scientific experiment, the quantity that varies or changes is called a variable. While class time that you have may never vary, you may always be in class the exact same amount of time every single day. The time that you're waiting in line at lunch may vary, and some days it may be shorter, whereas other days it may be longer before you actually get your food. It varies. Term number 7 is likely. Likely means having a good chance of being the case or of coming about. Likely is one of those words test writers love to use. It usually shows up in the expression most likely. For example, you may see a question like, on which of the following points would the authors of both passages most likely agree? You can't talk to the authors and definitely find out the answer, so what you're expected to do is to make an educated guess based on the evidence that the passage provides, and then explain, and usually cite evidence from the passage that explains what you just said. Number 8 is paragraph. You probably know what a paragraph is, but we're going to define it as one of several distinct subdivisions of a text. A paragraph is a few sentences about one particular aspect of a general topic in a reading passage. Or if you're writing, you're going to have a paragraph used to break up your ideas and thoughts. You can easily spot a paragraph because it is usually indented, meaning that there's a little bit of space before the first word. Questions on tests may refer to a particular paragraph in a passage or ask that you look at a paragraph and describe what it says or what an author means in that paragraph. Frequently on tests, particularly standardized tests, you'll see that the paragraphs have a number out to the left or right side of them to show you what paragraph they're talking about in questions. If they say you need to go to paragraph 8 and see what the author's saying about some character in this paragraph, you know to go to it because there's an 8 to the side of it. Term number 9 is include. To include is to have as a part, to be made up out of. When you include something, you incorporate it into a larger something. You may be asked why an author most likely chose to include certain details in his or her argument. It will be your job to infer why that decision was made. The opposite of include is to exclude, which means to rule out or prevent from joining. You're keeping it separate or you're keeping it out, whereas with include, you're keeping it in or you're showing why it's a part of something. Term number 10 is example. An example is an item of information that is typical of a class or group. An example is something used to prove a point. When making arguments, authors typically use examples to support their claims. And again, you may be asked to draw an example from the text or to cite an example from the text, where you'll need to quote a line inside of a passage to prove what you just said about your claim or your statement. That's just a brief introduction to our 10 words and definitions this week. Make sure to work with these, take notes, and begin to learn these words for the test you'll take. Thanks.